guys, Wes with xShear. I am here in the Rocky Mountains with Sam from PrepMedic, and we've been out here hiking, absolutely beautiful. And we want to go through a couple kits here and look at some basic carrying for hiking, for some different scenarios. If you follow Sam's work, you know he tends to pack a lot of gear, but we're gonna look at just kind of some basic, what's the minimum you wanna take into the woods with you if you're gonna go out and do some activities. So take it away.
Absolutely. So, anybody that's, kind of watched what I do, like you said, I carry way too much stuff. And even for professional standards, I carry more than I think most do. For me, like the base of any emergency kit you're carrying, it's going to be the things that are going to make a big difference in like a deadly situation as opposed to your comfort items. Yep. So I mean, my primary is going to be a cat tourniquet. Like if you can carry one thing, I would carry a tourniquet, not because it's the most common thing you'll see, but just because, if you do have that arterial bleed and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have that long, and this is something that can actually save your life.
Right, I agree completely. Because if you have one thing that's going to make a difference in seconds, it's going to be the tourniquet. It's probably not anything you're going to ever need, especially in a scenario where you're just hiking through the woods. But if you do, that will be the best return on the value of what you carry.
What I would say for to go along with the tourniquet, if you're gonna add more, I mean, the tourniquet's only good for, 4 appendages. So you also want something to be packing the junctional areas if you have a wound to stop. So combat gauze is kind of the standard there, but we've seen with a lot of the data coming out that you don't really need it to be the hemostatic agent. That just pressure is gonna do a lot.
Yeah, those are cool options if you have the space for them. What else do you have?
Well, and then this kind of covers your bleeding control, and like this big dressing here just can be used to, we keep that in, this packing dressing in, and then it kind of gets into more of that minor wound care. I fell, hit my head on a rock, and head wounds bleed a lot, so wrapping the head with that abdominal pad, or that minor, that laceration that's going to need stitches or something, wrap that up. But so it kind of bridges the gap between the really serious bleeding into the minor bleeding, the way I see it. So then we kind of get into the things that I think are more comfort items, and realistically, they're the things you're going to use the most. Mm-hmm. So when you're still keeping it like super lightweight, having some kind of boo-boo kit, or ouch pouch, or whatever you want to call it, to me is really important. So when I pack this stuff, I like to have Band-Aids, I like to have some kind of moleskin. Believe it or not, like tampons are something that people ask you for, or people ask me for quite a lot, just for that comfort, sanitation aspect of things. Some gloves, and then in here I just have like tweezers, lighter, and some toenail clippers, along with some stuff to put on a wound to the minor cut that we don't want to get infected. Put some bacitracin and triple antibiotic ointment on it.
Like you said, that's what you're going to be using all the time. I mean, hopefully you never need a tourniquet, you never need an ABD pad. Obviously you want it if you do, but this kit you'll be getting into, and if you're traveling with a group, someone's going to need something from that. So really valuable stuff.
What would you carry for topical agents? I think a lot of people have questions on burn cream or triple antibiotic or bacitracin, and from your perspective as a flight nurse, what would you carry in that pad?
I tend to keep it pretty simple. I pack pretty light, and so I would just do some triple antibiotic cream or basic antibiotic ointment. It's pretty versatile, and then it'll get you out of that scenario until you can get some more medical care without gumming up the wound or doing anything that, might be problematic later on.
Yeah. I think in the kind of must-haves, I think one thing is duct tape. We don't really think of it as a medical product a lot, but I think its uses are pretty vast. Splinting, you can use it as a wound closure, a poor man's steri strip if you need to. You can use this as a sling and a swath. I think it has a lot of aspects even outside of the survival and more into just the first aid. I think it has a lot.
Yeah, that's really neat, and it's so cool they have them so compact. No space at all, so yeah, that's a no-brainer.
One thing that I've noticed, if you want to do something and not have the roll, this was bought at REI, so it cost probably a little bit more than it would actually be worth. take like an old credit card, cut it in half, and then wrap the duct tape around it from a full roll. I found that works pretty well to keep it flat, and you can keep it in a small kit like that.
That's cool.
So I think the next set of stuff, you know, if you're a pack rat, you want to carry that next level of equipment. I think this is kind of your bare necessities, the things that you will need at a moment's notice, that will save your life, make your day a lot better, that aren't going to take up much space. You can kind of negotiate on the size of what each of these are. You know, if you don't want that huge H&H dressing, you can get a smaller one. H&H makes smaller ones, NAR makes some small ones. But this is kind of the stuff you need. Then getting into the things that if you really want to take it the next step into the preparedness realm and, you know, be able to do some other things without having to improvise, I think we have a couple other items there. So I think number one, and it's fitting that we have them here with you, is the xShear or a trauma shear of some kind. You know, with trauma shears, it's all about patient access. You know, you fall down, you break your wrist. I think that's a really common thing to see with backpackers because you have all that weight. Yeah. Trip, fall, reach your hands out, you broke your wrist, and now you have a jacket on. You have a long sleeve shirt on. When it's a displaced fracture, it's really hard to get that clothing above it to visualize it, maybe stop whatever bleeding there is. So I see shears. I always carry shears just because you can start cutting up the shirts. You know, you do not want to use a knife for that. You don't want to use even like a seatbelt cutter because we've seen instances of it catching tissue and now you've got a laceration on top of a broken arm. So for me, shears are something that I'll carry in, and then especially camping, they have so many uses, whether that's food prep, you know, you name it. There's a number of things you can do with it. So for me, shears are something that I'll carry with it. But I think when you're looking at if you really need them, you know, I don't know if it's in the necessities, but it's definitely something that's going to.
It comes down to how much weight you're willing to carry.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think another thing with shears is that, you know, the debate between the cheap disposable shears and something a little bit nicer like this. Mm-hmm. My experience is that you can use the cheap ones, but you use them once and they're done. Right. And they'll work for you there. So for me, I invest a little bit more into something like this, into the shear realm.
Yeah. I see you have some chest seals here. This was something we've talked about a little bit. If you're just hiking, the odds of a penetrating thoracic trauma is probably pretty low. But if you start getting into any other sports, if you're doing some dirt bike riding, if you're hunting, if you're doing any shooting sports or things like that, they take up almost no space and weigh almost nothing. So a nice packable chest seals like this, I think make a lot of sense. If you come across thoracic trauma, that can be a big deal during the time it'll take to get that person out of the woods.
Yeah, I agree. And they don't take up much space and they're pretty cheap. I think those are like $7 on North American Rescue's website. So, you know, just to have it, if you're going to pack something, may as well put it in. You know, they can be used as an occlusive dressing for an abdominal wound potentially too. So I think there's uses, but like you said, like hiking, the chances of a penetrating thoracic trauma or any really evisceration or penetrating trauma is slim to none in that. And then lastly, we have a splint. You know, like we were kind of talking about, like there's a huge probability of an orthopedic injury in the backwoods, you know, whether that's falling or having something hit you. You know, just those slips and falls take a lot of people out in the backcountry. So for me, I like carrying a splint.
Yeah, I agree. You can always fashion something with sticks, but it's not going to be the same. You know, the moldable splints are so nice for just getting you a comfortable immobilization of an injury like that. Works really well with that duct tape or that gauze to kind of immobilize that extremity, do a sling, or really do a good job with that instead of having to just kind of rig it.
You know, patient comfort for like a short pre-hospital transport, you know, if you're in the field, like getting that perfect splint, it's not that important because they're going to be in it for a very short period of time. So if there's something digging into them, it's not as big of a deal. In the backcountry where you might have to hike out, you know, a day or two, I mean, now you have, you want something that's more comfortable. So an improvised splint from a stick is going to cause some tissue breakdown, it's going to cause some pain, and it's just going to make their day a lot worse. So not something that's going to save a life, but I think it's something that'll help a lot.
So a few examples here from just simple bleeding control through a little bit more detailed basic first aid, pretty compact, pretty light stuff. If you want to see some of Sam's other videos, check him out. He goes through in detail some of these great kits he makes and he carries. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.